Hello everyone, I'm Drex Maggio. I'm a longtime friend of Fred's, and I'm sorry I couldn't be with you live today. I'm here in Tucson, Arizona, and I was pleased though that Julie asked me to say a few words to tell some Fred Steffen memories, and thanks to Detlef for taping this for me. For me, when I think about Fred, I think about his physicality. That is, he wasn't an imposing person, but he was barrel-chested, kind of ruggedly handsome behind his ever-present beard. He smiled all the time. He was optimistic, looked like he was glad to see you. People were likewise glad to be in Fred's presence. There was some years ago a TV commercial for Dos Equis beer that featured an actor interacting, talking with some people, and there was a voiceover from the announcer that told these tongue-in-cheek, impossible accomplishments of this most interesting man in the world. And then the actor faces the camera with his beer and says, "Stay thirsty, my friends." And the thing about the commercial was the guy looked exactly like Fred Steffen. And I was once cross-country skiing in Burnage Forest Reserve, west of Elgin. And unexpectedly, I ran into John. It's about that same time period as this commercial. And without referencing that, I said to John, "When did Fred start doing TV ads?" And John, without making any reference, laughed and said, "Doesn't that guy look just like Fred Steffen?" So Fred had that kind of universal look appeal to him. Fred told me once that he was hiking in Switzerland, had his hiking garb on, stepped off the trail to the parking lot, and a group of Japanese tourists beckoned him over. And he knew that they had mistaken him for some kind of local Swiss guide or peasant. But good-naturedly, he smiled, joined in the group, and that was Fred. That look was kind of known worldwide. Physically, though, there's this one outstanding thing that I remember. Excuse me if other people have told this story or they're about to tell the story. But it was on the occasion of Fred's 50th birthday. Judy planned a surprise party. As part of the surprise, John and Bob took Fred away golfing. She had invited several dozen friends of Fred's and relatives to greet him in surprise. So at the appointed time, we all lined up outside the house. Fred pulls up, sees what's happening, stops the car, walks up to the first person, thanks them, very nonplussed, does a sort of signature Fred Steffen bear hug, picks the person up off the ground, places them down, thanks them, walks to the next person and on down the line. And at the time, you just kind of laugh it off. That's a Fred Steffen thing. But come to think of it, I've never heard of anyone doing anything like that and never saw anything like that before that or after that. Fred physically could be very good and also kind of comically bad at the same time. We were skiing once at Silverthorne, their cabin in Colorado, and we were at Arapahoe Basin. And I'm not a very good skier, but I rode with Fred and Judy and my brother and sister, who were good skiers, up the lift. And at the last lift, you climb up further and go to this remarkable run called Palapicini. And it's beyond Black Diamond. And so that you don't mistake, there's a wooden fence and an archway that has a skull and crossbones and a sign that says, "Unmarked rocks and cliffs, experts only." So I turned around, but before I did, I saw Fred jump off the first cliff. So he skied Palapicini. On the same vacation, at another run at Keystone, that was a groomed blue run, kind of an average person's run. I'm skiing with Fred and Judy. Fred's got an unlit pipe in his mouth. He catches a ski tip or does something, tumbles forward, gets up, brushes the snow off, takes the pipe out of his mouth, taps it against his leg, gets the snow out, puts the pipe back in, and keeps on skiing. So that's the kind of yin and yang that I remember of Fred Steffen. Our signature trip that we ever did together, There were 8 of us, 6 bike riders, and Grant and Stuart were along on this trip. We went to the British Isles for a bicycle trip, a multi-country bicycle trip. And prior to the trip much, Fred and Judy, to my knowledge, weren't bike riders. They didn't own bikes. My wife, my friends and I did. We would go out to their place and bike ride. Fred and Judy just bought bikes, started riding. Fred, busy with all of Fred Steffen type law things and whatever, hardly trained, didn't really participate in any of the planning, but in his signature style, he steps in and says, you know what could make this trip run? I could make arrangements to buy a van in Elgin, pick it up in Frankfurt, Germany, where Detlev and Julie are living, take it across the channel on a ferry, pick you people up in London, and begin the trip from there. And I mean, he said it in such a natural manner and happened to have the resources to carry it out and have his brother and sister-in-law along with him on the trip. You think nothing of it, but when I think back to 1985 and doing that, it's sort of remarkable the way it happened. And Fred made it seem all very natural. There was one part of the trip, we were in southeastern Ireland. We were leaving Waterford. Everyone had the maps. Grant and Stuart decided to take the van and go see some site. We took off from Waterford inland, and it was hilly, started to rain, and we went off route to shorten the route, not knowing how Grant and Stuart could find us. As the rain picked up, we stopped at a place called the Thatched Roof Pub. And it was a little early in the day, so there was nobody in there, a little early to start drinking, but what the heck, it's raining. So there was a bartender who was the cook, and his wife who taught Irish dancing at an adjacent building. And we had a conversation, had drinks, and it turned out, ironically, that this couple that ran the bar and Fred and Judy shared the same anniversary date, which was coming up. So they sat and talked about family and their original wedding and all that. And who appears but Grant and Stuart. Don't ask me how that happened. It's the kind of thing that happens between Steffen and the brothers. It's a sort of an undefinable thing. Doing hiking, bike riding, whatever with Fred. Fred would sometimes turn to me kind of whimsically. He would say, Drex, are you sure that you're not a Steffen? As if that would be an ideal to acquire, to be an actual Steffen. But that was typical of Fred. You were more of a friend, invited into the family. So the only thing I can say is, farewell, Fred. Stay thirsty, my friend.